If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
And we are back. I'm Chris Evans, the CEO of Survival Dispatch. Beside me, my good friend Randy Nance from my home state of Texas, combat wounded Green Beret. Below him, Khalid Muhammad joining us from the Middle East. Agent 008, by the way, is his nickname. And beside him, my good friend Jeff MD, author extraordinaire, 26-year CIA operative. And I don't care what you say, those guys in Winnipeg. 007 is not from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. He's actually from Arizona, USA, and you look at him right there. So, and if you haven't heard that story before, you have to go back and watch some previous episodes to get the gist of it. So tonight we're going to be discussing insiders working in places that are typically targeted by terrorists, especially with the intel that Khalid has brought to the table. So hospitals, schools, those sort of places. Insiders have stolen information from those organizations or companies and then been caught either selling it or trying to sell it, as well as the fact there's been a lot of chatter over the years from terrorist groups specifically looking for those types of insiders to help them in their holy war, for lack of a better term. And I don't know what's going on with my my K9 alarm system, but they're going crazy over there. Anyway, so before we jump into that, we're going to do the conflicted question of the night. If you're not familiar with it, conflictedthegame.com. These are post-apocalyptic scenarios. And there's, I think, 14 card decks for this now. And there's always an element of morality, hence the name or the word conflicted. So after the collapse, people started bartering for goods and services. Illegal drugs have become a hot commodity in your region. And one day, while showing off your wares at a local trading post, someone tries to barter with you by paying you in drugs. There are no laws anymore to say what substances are legal or illegal, but you know, these are harmful, addicting substances. Would you take illegal drugs in exchange for your goods and services while bartering after the collapse? Why or why not? So, interesting question. We'll answer it at the end of this broadcast. We want to see your answers in the live chat or the comment section down below on whichever platform you're watching us. This is going out to 9 different platforms. So let's dive right in. And I've got 2 expos from Khalid here, or Khalid's group at least, on some news to share. Khalid, explain this device that the TTP is now using. Explain who the TTP is, by the way, for our new viewers as well, if you don't mind.
The TTP is the Taliban Pakistan. It is the Pakistani version of the Afghan Taliban. They were born back in 2007 after the Red Mosque was taken in Islamabad. A lot of people might not remember 6-month siege where the radicals decided they were going to try and take control of the capital city of Pakistan. It ended up with the army taking a major operation and killing a bunch of people. That's where the TTP was founded from. And since then, they have waged war against Pakistan. From 2007 until 2016, we were at war with them. Suicide attacks, car bombs, explosions. I mean, there was nothing that was out of the question with these guys. So everything that we're talking about happening in the U.S. has happened in Pakistan. We've seen how they operate because they've done it to us already. What you're seeing on screen right now, this came to light a couple of days ago. And we sat on and we thought about for a while whether we should make this public or not, because putting something like this out puts a lot of fear into people, because the way this explosive device is made, it looks like a toy. That's a shuttlecock on top of this little gadget. The way it's set up is it's a weight bomb. So it sits on the ground. The kid comes along, picks it up, and as soon as the kid picks it up, it blows up. And you are literally targeting our kids again. The TTP has targeted our schools. They have targeted our children regular basis. Now you're after them again. So after a lot of debate at Command 11, we decided, you know, let's make this thing public. Let's let people know that this thing's out there, so that even if you're in Pakistan, you know what to look for. Show it to your kids. If you see this anywhere, don't touch it. It's not a huge explosive, but it's enough to take out 5-10 people very easily. Wow.
Just out of curiosity, is there any possibility that this would be potentially introduced by terrorists here in America?
Absolutely. Again, Pakistan is the testing ground for everything they do everywhere else. Everything that you see happening anywhere else in the world has been tested here in Pakistan, because you are talking about a place that is right next door to Afghanistan. They infiltrate across the border here. They've attacked schools. They've attacked hospitals. They've sent suicide bombers into shopping malls. They've sent suicide bombers into commercial areas. We have seen everything that we're talking about happening in the U.S. We've seen here in Pakistan. We understand the methodology. We understand the thought process behind it, and we know what's coming to the U.S.
What exactly is the purpose of the shuttlecock, aka the birdie on the end? Is that just for looks to draw kids' attention?
Yeah, that's all it is, to draw kids' attention to it. You know, a little kid walking around, oh, look, it's a toy. He's going to pick it up, and when he picks it up, it blows.
There may be more to it than that. If you look at it, it looks like it's Randy can probably be know more about this than me. It looks like a 30-millimeter grenade round, and if it has a contact fuse on the front, the shuttlecock on top may be like a drogue chute. It slows it down. What it does, if you drop it from a drone, that way it falls nose first every time. And then when it hits the ground, if it has a contact fuse in the nose, like a mortar, like a 30-millimeter grenade round, it'll go off, and then all those nails go flying.
Essentially a primer.
Yeah, and if it lands improperly and it doesn't go off when it hits, then somebody picks it up, messes with it, then it can go off again. And but I have a feeling it's designed probably to be dropped from a drone.
Well, Jeff, we've seen the mortars that the Taliban are using in Pakistan. They're now using them in Syria as well. They're proper mortars they're dropping from drones.
It's not a mortar. It's a 30-millimeter grenade.
So aren't they 40-millimeter? Regardless of what the
millimeter
is,
it's the old
40.
Whether you shoot it out of a 203
grenade round that you use that you could shoot out of an M79. Or an M203, and you've got the ones that actually have the automatic ones, like you can just sit there and grind away. But that's what these look like.
Yeah.
You
so
could shoot them out.
So the way that thing works is whether you shoot it from any of those, including the Mark 19s and the Mark 47s, which are special operations because they have a sight on it, and the very first shot is on point. But these things have to make a 10 revolution that activates it, right? So once just like you don't sit here and play with these and throw them up and down and play catch, because you can arm it. All it has to do is make 10 cycles and that, rotations, and that arms that grenade, and then it will blow up wherever it lands.
And that may be what the shuttlecocks for too, to make sure they spin.
It probably helps the flight, I was thinking.
Yeah. Stabilize it. Yeah, you can get the military has launchers for these that'll even attach to an M4. And privately, you can only go to 37 millimeters. And I know some guys who have them. Actually, I know some guys who shot them last time we were at Jason Sawyer's. Of course, it's a one and done. But
with those nails, everything taped to the side, that's not coming out of a barrel.
No, I'm talking about the 40-millimeter shell there.
Yeah, but I mean these particular ones, they're being dropped. They're not being fired because you can't fire it out of a barrel with all that crap taped to the side. So my suspicion would be they're going to drop it from a drone.
Yeah, because isn't that what this one picture on the left is? Doesn't it look like it's over a crane and it's got a tether to it and it's about to be dropped? It looks like that's what I would say.
It does.
Yeah.
All right.
So I know we needed Mad Bomber Mike on it. Tell us.
Yeah. No kidding. All right. So next one up, Khalid. I'm going to go ahead and play this video, and then I'll have you explain it afterwards.
In order for U.S. forces to hit Mexican or Venezuelan soil and actually take on these initiatives to attack who they declare foreign terrorist organizations, there needs to be this clear justification. And I think that finding that justification actually won't be very difficult for them. Certainly when it comes to dealing with a regime change, for example, in Venezuela, where Maduro has a $50 million bounty on his head. Okay, that's double the bounty that
on-screen display was wrong. It's not 15 million. Pardon me. It's 50 million.
put on Bin Laden after 9/11, and then also when targeting drug cartels in Mexico, saying how many people have lost their lives to fentanyl and to cartel violence, even like the crimes going on at the border. That justification for this administration is certainly there.
So I'll go ahead and stop it there. So explain why you posted that video. I know why you did. Explain why you posted that video, Khalid.
Look, going after the cartels, we completely understand why you're going after the cartels. But when you start putting a military presence into places like Venezuela and Mexico, you have drawn your special operators out of the U.S. when you are facing an internal threat to the United States. Problem one is there. Problem two is this. You have the people that are planning the homeland attack in Syria and in Afghanistan, and you're not sending for your military there to clean that problem up. You take out the heads in Afghanistan, that's the end of the homeland attack. That is the end of the homeland attack. And what we saw today in video on X with the different videos of the Taliban celebrating and insulting the Americans, it's just unbelievable. The sheer level of bravado and arrogance that the Taliban has to insult the Americans, and you're taking money from the Americans. Your economy survives on what they're giving you. Your terrorists are surviving on the food that the humanitarian aid that the U.S. is giving you. And then you turn around, you insult the Americans. And my problem, the reason I posted it was, look, you are forgetting what the real national security threat is, and you're going after the cartels. The cartels can be dealt with after you take out the Al-Qaeda and the ISIS cells. Once that threat is gone, because that's a significantly higher body count, then go into Mexico, then go into Venezuela and take out the drug cartels. But you're waking a sleeping giant there that's tied in with the terrorists. And if they activate the terrorists in the U.S., you've got a two-front war.
So originally the $40 million a week that we were given to the Taliban, Trump, Marco Rubio, they shut it down and a court got it reinstated. Jeff, do you have any knowledge on that particular incident? Like, how on earth can we justify giving money to our enemies?
Yeah, and I don't see how a court would have any jurisdiction. That's 100% a foreign policy issue, and a court has no say so in that at all. That's Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution. They could tell the court to go pound sand, just like Rubio said when they were trying to say he had to negotiate with El Salvador to get that guy back. He goes, I don't have to do shit what the court says. You have no authority over this. And they should have done the same thing there. It's a foreign policy issue. Go away.
Yeah, so there's one bucket of money that's $40 million a week going to the Taliban. There's a second bucket of money that's another $10 million a week going to the Taliban. And then I can't remember what it was. Khalid forwarded me something, and the amount of money since Joe Biden.
There's four buckets. There's four buckets of money going to the Taliban.
What are the other two?
Bucket one is $40 million that we pay them. $40 million that we pay them. Bucket two is $10 million every week that we pay to run the Doha Command and Control Center. Bucket three is $5 million paid to 5 different Taliban leaders to not kill each other. Bucket four is counterterrorism money that we pay them to carry out counterterrorism against ISIS.
So
when you wrap it up, it's $83 million.
So I knew about the third one. I forgot about that, the $5 million. But explain that last bucket again so I understand this. Are you telling me that we're paying the Taliban to keep ISIS at bay, but the Taliban's committing terrorist acts posing as ISIS?
Yeah.
They keep giving us the money. It's not us, it's them.
The U.S. is actually paying $83 million a week $83 million a week. I mean, just to get your mind around that number, you are paying your biggest enemy $83 million a week just to try and keep them fighting against, to not fight against each other. So that's not counting humanitarian aid. That's not counting the amount of food you send them. That's not counting any of that. So you give them 40 million a week. That's part of the Doha Accord. You give them another 10 million a week that runs command and control in Doha. 5 million a week you give to 5 Taliban leaders, Habibullah, Sirajuddin Haqqani, Baradar, and there's 2 others. I forget their names. They get 5 million a week in their bank accounts from the US. And then to run counterterrorism against ISIS, the Pakistani Taliban, you're paid additional money for that.
Doesn't surprise me. Not at this stage of the game. Just doesn't surprise. It's insanity, but doesn't surprise me at all. So let's move into the main portion of the podcast for tonight. By the way, you go to survivaldispatch.news, sign up for a free account. You get our daily sit reps, get our Saturday watch guide. You get all the learning videos from JJ Morris for free. Just wanted to give everybody a reminder on that, because today's sit rep covers the high level points for what we're going to get into tonight. So again, we kind of titled this episode The Enemy Within, basically. So these are insiders who've stolen information from companies here in America related to targets that are attractive to terrorists, hospitals, schools, school boards, those sort of things. And then either sold it to radical Islamic groups directly or indirectly, who in turn have used that information or will use that information, have this information to do things like unlock doors. There's a crazy number out there. 56% of hospitals, this is too crazy to be crazy, as Jeff Nicholas would say. And the only reason I remember this because it's 56 and 56. 56% of hospitals in America have lost 56% of their keys and key cards and have no idea where they are, many of which are still active. So in other words, you have a whole bunch of people out there who have physical access to hospitals that should not have physical access to hospitals. There's been a couple audits done. That's where those numbers came from. Sources for that, by the way, are in our sit rep today over on survivaldispatch.news. But anyway, at the end of the day, we're facing this unprecedented internal threat that really should alarm everybody. We've got infiltration of our critical infrastructure across the board, whether it's our power grid. Jeff, as he likes to point out, all the SCADA systems that run our water supplies. We've got hospitals, data networks, satellite networks, and the list just keeps going on. As a matter of fact, the easiest way to get the list is to ask the Chinese, because they've bragged that they have access to 24 major components of our infrastructure coast to coast. So tonight we're going to look into that as far as how this ties into potential terrorism use. And the first thing I'm going to bring up here is Khalid and I both have done a lot of research into this, and he started before me, but I've spent 2 weeks here not sleeping because I've been trying to add this stuff up, make it square. These are 16 tier 2 cities in America. So as you can see, Buffalo's a good example. Denver would be another one, that have one tier 1 trauma center. Okay. So here's the thing. I want you to see the next map and you tell me what you all see compared to what we see. So what you're looking at right now is tier 2 cities with one tier 1 trauma center. And next one here, this is the same 16 tier 1 cities that have verified intrusions by insiders taking something that would allow terrorists or other people with nefarious purposes to break into those. So look at this with me again. These are the tier 1 cities, or tier 2 cities, pardon me, with one tier 1 trauma center. And these are 16 cities that have verified incidents of theft and intrusions by insiders that could be used in those cities. So I can click on one of these. So this one here, there was a vendor incident with Diligent, And by the way, UC Health comes up a bunch of times for my stuff. That one wasn't verified. This one's Nebraska Medicine, former employee who accessed records, got caught doing it. Catholic Health, MDS consultant, former employee breach. So what that one was is the guy took his old badge, changed the name on it, went to security and said, hey, I need to get in. I'm a part of the IT team and I need to get into that server room, unlock it for me. And security did just that. They opened it up for them. So let me go back to this one here, just because I'm going to show you a list actually from Khalid. Let me show that to you quickly right now. And we've showed the map that goes with Khalid's data. So here's a bunch of tier 1 trauma centers in tier 2 cities. But as you can see on the list here, some of these cities, these tier 2 cities, have more than one level 1 trauma. Okay. So right there, for example, you've got Phoenix has 7 tier 1s, but if you go to Huntsville, Alabama, it's 1. Goodyear, Arizona, it's 1. Buffalo, New York is 1. Buffalo is one, by the way, that keeps coming up over and over and over again in our research on this subject. And I'll show you another document. This is what built the second map with the red stuff on it, with the red markers. So these are all instances of insiders, again, who've taken information that could be used by a third party, like a terrorist organization, to gain access one way or another to the facilities, or have virtual access, cyber attack stuff, which means you can log in and you can open all the doors in the facility. You can lock certain doors and lock people in, because all of that is, of course, online these days. And we've got some different reports that I'll bring up that show how multiple hospitals have failed miserably in trying to secure themselves against this. So, Cleet, I'm going to go to you first, just to get give me the 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 foot view of how soft this makes us. Like, I can't think of a better word.
Well, it's not just this. I mean, if you look at the map that we've got on our website of the different breaches, we've got some cyber attacks in there where hospitals have had a cyber attack carried out on them, where employee data, patient data has been pulled. Once you have employee data, you have passwords, you have usernames, you have access rights. You can do anything you want. And when you look at it from a 30,000 foot point of view, you're going, okay, look, this is all going on, and no one's paying attention to it. No one's talking about it. Mainstream media will not even touch this. They will not even talk about it. When you start coming down slowly, and looking at where these things are happening and how these things are happening, the alarm bells start to go off. The alarm bells start to go off because when you start looking into each individual incident, it's a former employee. It is someone who's gotten a hold of a key card. It's someone who's gotten a hold of a key. It is someone who's gone in and done some probing and tested a security door. It's someone who's come through the basement of a hospital, through the tunnels, and come through a door in the tunnel and walked up into the hospital. The number of hospitals that I've spoken to, the first question I've asked is, do you have tunnels? And when they said, yes, we have tunnels, I said, how do you get in that door? What kind of security do you have on that door? The other thing I'll tell you, you put this up on your Substack, or you put up a shot on your Substack, we stacked it. We did a little investigation in the US. We hired a friend, a guy, to go to some different of the tier 2 cities and ask how many school blueprints, how many hospital blueprints have been requested from counties and from cities. There wasn't a single hospital's blueprint that hadn't been requested. And then we start looking at remodelings that had gone on. Those are blueprints that are out in public. Terrorist comes along, takes a picture. He's got an entire picture of the entire hospital, top to bottom. Knows where the foundations are, knows where the doors are, knows where everything is. This is a level of planning that we have never seen before. This is, again, going back to what Al-Qaeda does. They think long-term. They plan out every single step. ISIS is quick hit. They want a quick hit. They want the big show. What we're seeing is a coordination happening. Al-Qaeda is holding ISIS back, saying, no, don't carry out the attack yet. We still have things to do. The things to do is this. They're breaking security protocols now. They're understanding how to get in. They're understanding how to get through key cards. They're understanding how to get through doors so they can carry out the attack they want to carry out.
Yeah, it's dire to say the least. Randy, I know that I didn't get the brief to you guys as fast as usual today just because I was swamped, but I'd like to hear your high-level overview of this as well.
Well, it's pretty crazy to me again when I listen to this stuff. I mean, it's what you do if you had some real professionals that wanted to any target set, right? This is exactly what you would do. It's called the playbook. I mean, it's so again, it's on another level of folks that I didn't have to deal with when I was on the battlefield, either time, by any stretch of the imagination. And, to me, it's hard to believe that we're really facing that this could be a possibility, and I think, my personal thoughts, and, Jeff, don't get mad at me, but the reality is I've also seen a little taste of what we do and how things work. And I know for a fact, if all of our agencies and everybody else was actually doing the job they're designed to do, we are good enough that this would not be allowed. It would not happen. But just like September 11th, I think beforehand, no one would even question if we were able to be hit or not. And then all of a sudden we were. And we've talked about how we're back to that now. And he mentioned how, no one's wanting to talk about it. Our press isn't one. You know why? Because if they allow it to happen, they want to have the CYA of saying later, oh, it was just another intelligence fail. We should have seen it, but we didn't. It's just another intelligence fail, and write it off that way. And, to me, all of us have worked too hard for this kind of crap. You know what I mean? And it still staggers me to this day to see that there are so many people that could probably stop this that may not. If it actually happens, it will be because somebody, I won't say blatantly let it happen, but they definitely turned their back so they didn't have to watch.
Yeah, fair enough. So Jeff, you've been on the other side of this. I'm curious what your thoughts are as far as it doesn't seem like due diligence has been done, but I'm not blaming that on, the CIA or anything like that. It seems like it's a failure across the system.
Randy's right. For as much money and manpower that we put against this, we should be doing a lot better. And we as Americans and the American government, we're in the unenviable position of we have to be right every time. They only have to be right once. But how many times have we seen somebody, shoot up something or do something, and then the FBI, well, he was on our radar.
Every time.
Well, that's nice to know. You didn't do jack shit, but it was nice to know it was on your radar. It's a good thing to know the radar works. Apparently, the people reading the radar don't work. And we saw it after 9/11. You're doing the postmortem on that, and it's like there's just so many freaking red flags that were just ignored. We had, they go back and they look, and these airlines, they hire all these people to clean the airplanes, right? Well, these people have complete access to the airplanes. They have complete access to the airport, and they were finding box cutters put in airplanes that are on the very first flight of the day, which means they were either there all night or someone put it in when they cleaned the plane. And you think about if I'm Joe Terrorist, and you work as a cleaner and for the airline, and I say, okay, I'm on row 7, seat D. So they just put a box cutter in the little pocket for 7D. So when I sit down, I can go through security. I don't have the knife on me. But as soon as I sit down, it's just right there because the cleaning guy put it in. Now he doesn't go through the metal detectors and all that crap. He just puts his badge in the reader, walks on, and goes and does his thing. And there are so many people, it's like, didn't somebody not think of this? And what we saw in Atlanta, especially after 9/11, is so many of them were Somalis.
Yeah.
Just a shit ton of them. And they were getting phone calls. We were tracking ones where someone got a phone call basically warning them that 9/11 was going to happen, 8 hours before it did. And you had these people who go out to them and said, And they knock on the door. The woman answers the door. They talk to her. She works at the airport, cleans planes for Delta. And then they say, did you receive a phone call at 1 o'clock this morning? And she goes, no, I didn't. Okay. They just walk away. It's like, wait. We have the call records that say there was a phone call made to that house. But they didn't even do the follow-up, which was, did anyone else in this house receive a phone call at 1 o'clock in the morning? But it's that kind of lazy investigative work. And, we at the agency, we threw a fit about this. We said, are you freaking nuts? Because we got this golden lead from this. It was just dumb luck. It wasn't us. It was a local guy, and the local cops put it all together and handed it to the Bureau. Well, the person who investigated it for the Bureau just took that and walked. We said, you got to be kidding. We made a big stink. They said, okay, we'll reinvestigate. What they do, they sent the same person out who asked the exact same question of the same person in the house who gave the exact same answer back. And they go, well, it's verified. She didn't know anything. Okay, being stupid twice in a row doesn't make you smart. And that's exactly what that kind of crap happened. We saw the woman in Arizona who was saying, okay, we have Saudi men in flight school, and all they want to know how to do is take off. And she was an FBI agent, and she raised a red flag. She got disciplined. She didn't get, and they didn't do anything. And when it was brought up later, she complained later, she got disciplined for that. What the hell? So when you reward incompetence, you get more incompetence. It's like subsidizing. Anything you subsidize, you get more of. You subsidize stupidity, you get more stupidity. And that's exactly what we did before, during, and after 9/11.
Yeah, fair comment. And I'm keeping those maps open across the top if we need to come back to them at any point during the conversation. But so check this out in California. So they have a law there that says if any information was stolen, so it could be cyber, it could be over, the network, but it could also be physical data that's stolen as well. There has to be a report filed with the state. Okay. So there's a CSV file here that you can download, which, by the way, I did download, and you'll see it right at the end here. There are 4,695. I'm on line 4696. This is going back to 2012. Of course, the top line has the names of the columns. So it's 4,695 instances. And here it is just in HTML format on the website, goes on and on and on. You would not believe the number of organizations in here, everything from office buildings that have, hundreds of offices, a couple of them even in the thousands. You've got, public institutions, you've got schools, you've got county offices where they've stolen credentials for all of the county facilities, for all the people in the county facilities. And one of the kickers in this, by the way, is if somebody stole information that did not need to be decrypted, which is key. So it's not that they took a database full of encrypted information. They took data that was already decrypted so that it was easily readable. And it goes on and on and on. Here's a health services corporation, offices right there, Effortless Offices, LLC. You've got construction companies, you've got universities right there, New York University. It's astonishing what's been.
San Clemente.
Yep. And this is just one state, right? So this is just California, and it's almost 4,700 instances of this being stolen inside the organization that is unencrypted, has credentials. And of course, those credentials can be used to access the systems. It can be accessed, like I said before, you can open doors, you can unlock doors, you can lock doors, you can do everything you can imagine is on the network today. But I'm going to go to Jeff's stuff here. It's lazy people at the end of the day. I'll give both of you, Clede and Randy, a chance to speak on that if you want. Just the sheer number of data thefts is insane.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, and that's only to 2012, right? So we don't have the full data. I mean, that's, it's just one of those things. It comes back to journalism, right? Nobody's talking about that. And you got to wonder why. Why is none of our media covering any of this stuff, or even down to which is at 48,000 terrorist attacks by now. I don't know. We're probably getting close in the world. I mean, it's since September 11th. We haven't looked at that number in a few days, but you know, I don't know.
Well, we just passed 48,000 a couple days ago, so I'll pull it up for you right now. So since 9/11, globally, Islamic terrorist events. So this is not people killed. This is not a head count. This is individual results. There have been 48,021 Islamic terror attacks since 9/11 globally around the world. And of course, you can come over here, and there's multiple other sources that we use as well. But here's one, you know, August 13th in Syria. Here's August 13th in India, August 11th in Nigeria, and the list goes on and on. I mean, you can get just mountains of information off this website, thereligionofpeace.com, by the way. The numbers are staggering, and none of this gets covered. Like, well, this much gets covered by legacy media here in America. And I know the answer to your question, Randy, and I'm not being facetious. The reason the legacy media doesn't cover this is because in 1980, there were over 500 independently owned news organizations in America.
Oh, yeah.
You now have 6 conglomerations own everything.
Yeah.
So Vanguard, BlackRock, companies like that. And how many times have we seen the videos where it looks like, you know, Hollywood Squares, and you've got all the anchors, news anchors up, and they're all repeating the same thing verbatim. It's the Mockingbird media, right? So 20 some odd years ago, a friend of mine, Donnie Peterson, he said to me, he said, you know, Chris, we don't have legitimate news anymore. It's probably like 2002, 2003. And I agreed. He wasn't telling me something I didn't know, but he said, best case scenario, our media now is infotainment. Worst case scenario, it's propagandatainment. And as far as I know, Don was the guy who invented that word. It's the first time I ever heard it. Well, if he was still alive today, I think he would say we don't have infotainment in the media anymore. It's all propagandatainment, like every last bit. I watch this stuff and think to myself, golly, we must be living in the Matrix, because the actors are so freaking bad that you couldn't make this shit up. I mean, looking at people like Jasmine Crockett, and then on the other side, you've got lunatic rhinos as well. I mean, it just, maybe I'm just getting black pilled at 56 years old, but it doesn't seem to jive anymore. But Clete, I want to give you a second to speak to just the vast number of data thefts and stitch it together with your expertise in intel. How big of a threat is this?
This is nothing. I mean, what you're seeing out of California, this is people that have actually reported what's happened. There's a lot of companies in California that have not even told that they've had data breaches. Facebook has been breached 5 times.
Why might they not report the information, Clete?
Because the sheer amount of information that's been taken is just unbelievable. Facebook's been breached 5 times. Twitter X has been breached twice. Just think about the number of users on Facebook and the amount of information you've shared and how much data they've taken off you. The reason we say this is because we're in a lot of these hacker groups where these data packages are offered for sale. So you can buy a certain country's entire defense data. When France was hacked and all their defense data was taken, that data was offered for sale. We're in that group where you could buy all that data. Jets, security, to all their military bases. You had their nuclear plans, they were offered for sale. $500, $1,000, $5,000. It's actually an auction that goes on. How much are you willing to pay? And the same thing exists for every other type. I know when we first started starting the 2025, when we started tracking cyber attacks, the number of hospitals that had data breaches that have never appeared in public, the number of companies that have had data breaches have never appeared in public. Why is this not being reported? Because as soon as you report it, all of a sudden people start to freak out. And they start going, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? How are they going to use my data? What data have they gotten? You don't even know how much data you put out there. I mean, just go, for all of the people watching, go to your Facebook account and go look at how many different posts you put out there, how many pictures you put out there. There are pictures of you, there are pictures of your wife, there are pictures of your husband, there are pictures of your kids, there are pictures of your mother and father, your house, your vacations, everything's out there. How difficult is that to use against you? And when you're developing a target list, you put it all out for them.
Yeah, I would just, the cynic in me, again, I think I'm on the verge of being black-pilled here, but the cynic in me, Khalid, would say the reason that a bunch of those companies have not released that information is because it would destroy their bottom line. It would, people would lose all confidence in those businesses, would no longer, you know, fraternize them and put them out of business.
You know, it's okay. You lose data to, so your bank gets breached and someone steals your identity. Well, you could sue your bank. Yep. They don't want that, so they don't publicize it.
Exactly.
Plus, it's embarrassing.
And I mean, obviously, California has pretty strict regulations on this stuff. But I would say if there's almost 4,700 of them announced since 2012, that the number is probably double that at the bare minimum, bare minimum sort of thing. So moving on to the next.
How do you know?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. They're required to report it in California, but I would still posit that many of them don't.
Well, I'm required to drive under the speed limit. Doesn't happen very often.
I hear you. I hear you. So you're going to have to bear with me for a minute on this one. This is a really good article that sums up the danger of everything that we're discussing tonight. And then I've got specific questions for everybody on the panel. So the hidden danger of insider threats in critical infrastructure. Look at the date, May 29th, 2025. This is as current as it gets. We think of cyber threats. Most of us imagine anonymous hackers or overseas attackers targeting systems from afar. Let me give you a number, by the way, when I was working with Sun. This is from the year 2000, so 25 years ago. 25 years ago, 80% of data thefts occurred inside the business. And that number was from the FBI in 2000. You can look it up. It hasn't changed much, believe it or not. Okay, so but one of the most dangerous risks actually comes from the inside. Insider threats are caused by people within an organization who are often overlooked, but they could do serious damage, especially in industries that keep our country running. In this blog, we will explore types of insider threats and personas, the real-world impacts of insider threats, and strategies to prevent this hidden danger from causing significant damage to the services society relies on. It's going to take a minute here. So if you guys want to add something midstream, just speak up and I'll stop and I'll turn it over to you. So what exactly is an insider threat? According to the Australian government's 2023 guide, countering the insider threat is an insider is anyone's current or former employee, contractor, or service provider who has legitimate access to a workplace's systems, information, or physical areas. There are two types of insider threats. Unintentional insiders, those who make mistakes without realizing the impact, and intentional insiders, those who knowingly cause harm either for personal gain or under pressure. The guy breaks down these into 5 common personas. Number 1, the accidental insider, someone who makes an honest mistake due to poor training or lack of awareness. Number 2, the negligent insider, knows better but cuts corners or ignores rules. That kind of sounds like what Jeff just said 5 minutes ago. Number 3, the self-motivated insider, has their own agenda, whether it's revenge, money, or personal beliefs. Number 4, the recruited insider, is encouraged by an outsider like a criminal group or foreign agent. Number 5, the coerced insider, acts out of fear, blackmail, or manipulation. Actually, before I carry on, I want to go to number 4, Khalid. Quick question for you. Are there instances of terrorist groups not presenting themselves as a terrorist group and recruiting somebody to help them, and the person doesn't even know they're helping terrorists?
We are monitoring a company in Europe right now. It is connected to the Muslim Brotherhood. What they're doing is they're hiring hackers, and they're asking them to go and pitch to companies. We want to test your corporate security, your corporate IT security.
Pen testing.
It's not the test. It's not the terrorist approaching you. It's a proper corporate organization comes to you and says, well, we do white hat hacking. We want to test your IT security from the inside and from the outside to see if we can breach it. And how much will you pay us to do it? This is what we're charging. Why are you willing to let us do it? It's backed by the Muslim Brotherhood.
Wow, very interesting. I didn't know that. Thanks for sharing that, Khalid. So insider threats don't always involve someone being malicious or trying to sabotage systems. Sometimes it comes about by mistake. So someone clicking on a dodgy link or sending an email to the wrong person, whether intentional or not. The fallout can result in leaked sensitive data, disruption of services, or damage to the public's trust. In critical infrastructure sectors like energy, water, healthcare, or transport, the stakes are even higher. These services are essential to our daily lives, and even small disruptions can have devastating consequences. Why this matters for critical infrastructure. Insider threats can impact all organizations, but critical infrastructure is especially vulnerable. These industries keep society functioning. They rely on trust, security, and smooth operations to do so. According to a recent report from the Cyber and Infrastructure Security Center, and in line with the mandatory cyber incident reporting SOCI Act, I'm not familiar with that, to be honest with you, there were numerous instances in the last year of data exposure, data theft, and data leak via insider threat. During a recent internal call, some real examples were mentioned. Visiting delegations being used as distractions while someone sneaks onto a computer. No photos allowed on site to prevent sensitive information getting out. No more than 5 external visitors at a time to keep things manageable. Keeping HR in the loop, since life changes like financial stress or personal issues can make someone more vulnerable. According to the CISC report, real world de-identified examples of MCIR cyber incidents caused by insider actors included: example 1, a contracted employee of a critical energy asset downloaded extensive amounts of confidential data to a personal hard drive upon their resignation at the company. This included technical plans, details on the layout of the facility, and operational data. Example number 2, an employee at a critical infrastructure asset forwarded numerous emails to their personal email account with attachments that contained sensitive confidential information about the critical infrastructure. The employee then went overseas on holidays. Example number 3, an employee didn't have their systems access revoked after leaving the organization. They subsequently used their access to download sensitive information. This all goes to show that threats aren't always high tech. They can be as simple as someone being in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong intentions. The real world impacts of insider threats. The government's guide outlines just how damaging these insider acts can be. The impacts go far beyond the IT department. Number 1, people get hurt. Mental stress, job loss, in extreme cases, even physical danger. Number 2, services get disrupted, delays in healthcare, outages in energy, or chaos in transport. Number 3, trust gets damaged. People lose faith in the system, and that's hard to rebuild. Number 4, money gets wasted. Resources that should go to the public end up fixing preventable mistakes. There are also reputational consequences. When a breach happens, it can take years to rebuild public trust. But in the meantime, critical operations might face scrutiny, audits, and funding issues. How can we prevent insider threats? While there is no one-size-fits-all solution for preventing insider threats, every organization is different. There are a few strategies proven to consistently work well. Number 1, lead with integrity. A strong culture begins with leadership. And I'm fond of saying when a company's off the rails that a fish rots from the head down. When leaders model integrity and accountability, it sets the tone for their entire organization. Engaged and supported employees are less likely to pose a risk. Number 2, keep everyone informed. Training can't just be a one-off box to check during onboarding. Employees need regular reminders, know what's okay, what's not, and how to spot something suspicious. Empowering people to act when something feels off is just as important as having policies in place. Number 3, make it easy to speak up. If someone notices something odd, they need a safe, confidential way to report it. They need to trust they won't be punished for doing the right thing. Anonymous reporting tools can be a great option here. Number 4, security at every level. This includes people, proper vetting, clear policies, and support during tough times. Systems, strong passwords, data access rules, and software monitoring. Spaces, restrictive zones, ID checks, and visitor escorts. Before I read this next section, Khalid, review once again. I know you did before, but just touch on it. The terrorist groups getting passports from other countries. I think Sarah touched on this as well, that aren't a red flag. And next thing you know, they're on a visa and they're here and off to the races.
Yeah. This is something that's become, ever since the Taliban took control back in 2001, this has become something that's become very regular. Venezuela, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Syria, Brazil are some of the countries we already know that are using passports issued for terrorists from those countries. Mexico has been used a few times, but not as much as we would think. The problem is that because there's no vetting, it's like Sarah said in her tweet, when you're not asking the deeper questions that, okay, you say you're from Europe, but where in Europe? What city or what village are you from? Where do you live in Europe? You're giving a passport, you're giving them literally a free pass into a foreign country, whether it be the US, whether it be anywhere in Europe, whether it be anywhere else in the world. You're giving them a free pass. And you're not doing the background. And this is the problem when like JJ was saying, when we had the infiltration into the US, they weren't even asking questions. Okay, so you're from Afghanistan? Click, go on ahead. We can't figure out your birthday? Okay, let's give you a different birthday and pass you right through. When you start operating that way, you are degrading your own security. You are literally degrading your own security, because it takes maybe 5 questions to figure out if somebody's from wherever they are. You have the internet at every immigration station. Guy walks up, says, I'm from Paris. Pop open a Paris map. Okay, so whereabouts in Paris are you from?
That's a good one.
If he can't name the street, I mean, are you going to believe he's from Paris? I mean, to this day, I still remember every city in the U.S. I lived in, every street I lived in in the U.S. You can ask me exactly where I lived in when we lived in South Bend. Where do we live? I'll give you the exact address because I lived there. But a guy who's got a fake passport hasn't been trained at that level. He's just been told, go through immigration with this passport. Don't worry, it's a clean passport. It'll go through. Ask 5 questions.
That makes sense. It sounds a lot like the Israeli security model, actually, that we've discussed before at their airport. So let me get us through the next section here. We're almost at the end of this. Spotting the red flags early. Insider threats rarely come out of nowhere. There are often warning signs like sudden behavior changes, unexplained wealth, working odd hours, or trying to access systems they are unauthorized to do. So good insider threat program will look at these indicators as patterns, not isolated events. Just because someone works late doesn't mean they're a threat. But if it's combined with other signs, it may warrant a closer look. HR teams and managers are key here. Regular check-ins, listening to concerns, and watching for signs of stress can make a big difference. What if something does go wrong? Even with the best planning, things can still go wrong. That is why every organization needs a response plan which details who handles investigations, how to gather and review evidence, when to report to authorities, etc., etc. Post-incident reviews should always be conducted to understand, like an AAR, to understand what the gaps were and if the behavior could have been detected earlier. It's not about blame, but learning how to quickly identify, respond to, and prevent similar incidents from occurring in the future. It's also important to remember insider threats don't always come from bad people. Sometimes it's good people who make bad choices when they're under pressure. Being proactive, not reactive, is the best strategy. In critical infrastructure, trust is everything. No sense in reading the balance of that. So let me get back to my questions here. And I'll go to you first, Randy. I'm curious what your thoughts are. It didn't go into super deep detail, but what are your thoughts on warning signs? I've got one that stands out to me, and that's unexplained wealth. And that is something people look at, right? Like how the hell is this guy's making $100,000 a year and he lives in $1 million freaking home and drives a, Ferrari.
Yeah, if you work in the same place, that probably would, if you know the levels of, who's in the executive branch down all the way to the janitor of each place, then, if they're not matching up to their pay, they probably would. But I mean, you think about anything that's off, you know what I mean? It could be even their attitude every day, or that they seem to be sneaking, you know what I mean? Just people know what that feels like. When they walk up and somebody feels like, it's the same thing when people are talking about you, right? Or anyone, and they walk up, then everybody stops talking, right? But you could tell when you catch people in the middle of something. And I think that's part of it. But, I think really it's deeper than that. Including all this insider thing, right? Who's going to hurt you the worst? The people that are the inside, your family, your friends, or these people that work for these companies. And you think about where our society's come since all of us grew up. You know what I mean? We used to be proud Americans, and everybody was. That's no longer the case. And then everything else they sprinkled into the kids since September 11th on, really, you know, people don't care. You remember we grew up, one of the things they taught you, if you're going to do something, do it right? Because your name is on that work. That says who you are. And that used to be what your reputation and your credibility was built off of. Again, I guess, merit system, right? But we seem to be lacking that. So some of this is, a lot of it is what Jeff said, laziness, but that's also a lack of care. They just don't care. They don't, for lack of a better term, give a shit anymore. People don't care. And then we've also degraded society where everybody's doing a little something they shouldn't be, it seems to be, right? So then they don't want to throw a rock in a glass house. So they're not going to bring stuff up. And then if you get, it leads back to all those, how you can get compromised, whether it was you were coerced, all those are going to happen. But again, it's why it's 80% are insiders. And again, if we cared more at our jobs, then maybe that would cut that number down. And used to people had integrity, but I guess all that it seems to have just unraveled and be gone. And this is what you're left with. This is what happens.
Well, I don't disagree. I think part of the attack on the nuclear family and, taking things like the Lord's Prayer out of schools and everything has just caused this, devolution of society. Then you add in all the stuff on the internet, what kids are exposed to these days. And it's pretty grotesque. But without going down that rabbit hole, Jeff, you've been over the years in a number of, secure locations, not asking you to give away any information that you can't, but what are specific security protocols that should be implemented in these places? Let's say hospitals in particular, because we know it's a target, as far as staff with access to things like door control systems, communications infrastructure, those sort of things. Where are they missing the boat here? What's going on, and how do you help them?
Well, I think there's probably two areas. One is audits. Are people accessing data they have no need to access? Why is the secretary pulling up the financials for the whole company? Why is the guy who cleans the bedpans pulling up the security system? So that's one. You got to look for people getting stuff they shouldn't get. And I was on the other side of this. I was the guy that was recruiting people to give me the insider information. And that's what I did for years. But there's other ways you can do it. You can, and we've done this. You say, here, download this data for me, put it on this thumb drive. Well, when he puts in the thumb drive, it downloads spyware. So I can gain access to the system, whether he has access to it or not. But, and people worry about hacking. You don't have to hack. That's the hard way. The easy way is you just recruit someone who can just go in there and do it. You recruit someone who has the access. Because it takes a lot of time and effort to hack into a secure computer system. It's easier to just recruit a guy who's got a key and can just open the door, go in there and punch it in. So I'd say one thing is audits. You make sure who's got access to what. And the other thing is restricting access. Everybody doesn't have to have access to everything. Everybody doesn't need to have a card key that opens every door. If you're an oncology nurse, do you really need to have access to radiology? Maybe, maybe not. More importantly, if you're an oncologist or a radiologist, do you have to have access to the pre-me ward, the neonatal? No, probably not. But you have so many people that once they get through the door, they pretty much have access to everything. And it's like, oh, we don't want to exclude people. Yeah, you do. You do want to exclude people. But one thing I think we're missing, and you touched on with the nuclear family, but something a little different. And I'm not ripping on the younger generations or anything else because they didn't do it. They're just adapting to it. It used to be you went to work, you got a job at a company, and you may be there for 30 years. Yeah. That company was your family. And you protected the company, and the company protected you. But, like people who worked at Boeing for 30 years, it was in their interest to make sure nothing bad happened to Boeing. But nowadays you get people, it's a gig. I work it for a couple of years, and then I'm going to go over here, and then I'm going to work there a couple of years, and then go over here. There's no loyalty, and therefore there's no disincentive to basically, rat out your boss. Say, well, okay, yeah, I have a 2-year contract. He's probably not going to renew me when it's up, so I'll just take some data and sell it to whoever wants it.
So there's a famous essay called "The Hedgehog and the Fox" by Isaiah Bryant, and I won't dive down this rabbit hole too deep. But at the end of the day, whether it's a company or an individual, there's this concept. Think of a Venn diagram. What can you be the best at? What can you make money at? And what are you deeply passionate over? And the intersection of those 3 things is what you should be aiming for. And I would argue the vast majority of people today don't have a whole lot of passion to do what they're doing. And they job hop or go from one gig to the next. And, if I was going to say anything to the younger generation, I would drive that point home. It's called the hedgehog concept, by the way. There's a whole thing behind it, which I used for years in my consulting gigs. But anyway, Khalid, I have a very specific question for you. And that is, how do these terrorist organizations typically identify and recruit potential insider threats within American facilities?
Well, they do it 2 ways. Number one, they look for people that have huge amount of debt. If you're carrying a lot of debt, that's something that they can buy you out of. They pay you enough money that you pay your debt off, and you'll do what they want for them. Number 2, and it's something that intelligence agencies are very famous for using, is a honeypot scheme. You get something.
It's just too easy.
It's easy. It is. It's the easiest way to do it. Girl walks in at the bar, sits down, has a drink with you, starts flirting with you. Next thing you know, you've gone up to a room. There's a camera fitted in there. The next day, somebody comes and knocks on your door and says, "We need you to do this for us." And you go, "No, I'm not going to do it." "Well, would you like us to show this to your wife?"
Yep.
And it's game over.
Well, but Khalid, you didn't just assume somebody's gender and sexual orientation, did you? Because you can't do that.
Oh, no.
Gender identity. No.
I got a story.
Gender identity.
I didn't make the rules.
Kind of a quasi joke, but they always say the Russians were really big on honeypots. And they say, if you go to your hotel, there'll be a knock at the door. There'll be a girl, and if you turn her away, the next night there'll be a knock at the door, and it'll be a boy. Yep. If you turn him away, the next night there'll be a knock at the door. It'll be like a goat. It's like do whatever floats your boat.
They'll keep going till they get you. They will keep going till they get you.
And I had a friend who actually he was in, I think he was in Leningrad at the time, and he's at the bar having a cocktail, and then at 10 o'clock, all the locals have to leave, except these beautiful young women. And one of them came up to him and, started chatting him up. And he was like, he's like in his 60s. And he's like, yeah, I'm not that blind. And so he just looks at her and goes, so tell me, how much does the KGB pay you girls these days? And she just turned beet red and walked out. And another time he had an attractive older woman. He was on a tour, and she was everywhere he went, she happened to be there. And she, they talked for a couple of minutes, but nothing big. Well, then she calls his hotel room that night. And, he didn't tell her what hotel he was in. He didn't give her a name, but she calls his hotel room and says, hey, do you want to come down for a drink? And he says, well, I'll tell you what, let me hand the phone to my wife. If she says yes, I'll do it. And he hands the phone to his wife and click, they just hang out.
Is the MO there that when the guy goes downstairs to the bar, they install the surveillance equipment in his suite, and then when he comes back with the girl, they Jeffrey Epstein him, basically?
Yeah.
Well, I think they do it before he even gets there now.
Right.
Given the room, it's already
some hotels in Moscow. That every room is wired for sounding. And I've actually had to use hotel rooms that we were told, every room's pre-wired. So I had to conduct a meeting. I was in Alias, but we were doing a recruitment meeting actually for this guy commercially recruited, it was CIA. But we had to go through the whole meeting and never break character, because even when the guy's in the bathroom, we knew we were potentially being watched. And so we made it, you think we can make him an offer? Yeah, I think so. I think he's got the right skill set for the company. You never broke character. because you
Yep.
couldn't.
Yep. But now the honeypots become so much easier because you can do it online.
Yeah.
You put up a filter of a person and you start chatting. I mean, Pakistani intelligence has done this to India. Pakistani intelligence has people inside of India that has passed us so much information, but they've done it through honeypot schemes.
Well, Ukraine was using girls on cell phones who would get on Tinder, and Russian soldiers on the front lines were going on Tinder, and these girls would get on Tinder with them and live chat. And these guys they have their cameras so they can see where they are from behind. They can see their unit insignia. They know what unit they're with. Hey, where are you at now? And then, and then they would artillery would come in 10 minutes later and wipe them out.
Yep.
That happened in a bunch of instances, especially at the beginning of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, where you had some people on Reddit who thought they were going to go over and fight the Russians. And so they're over there in the Ukraine texting Reddit on what a great job they're doing. And the Russians picked up, they easily identified where they were, telemetry, dropped the stuff on them and killed them.
155, boom.
Right. Yep. So moving on to the next one here. This is fairly long too, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to try and just hit the high points across this. So insider threat statistics for 2025, key facts, types of incidents and cost. Look at the date on this, August 6, 2025. So I tried to pick a lot of current stuff for tonight's broadcast in particular. Understanding the current landscape of insider threats and cybersecurity is essential for any organization aiming to strengthen its security posture. As the nature of internal risks evolves, tracking the latest trends empowers security leaders to make smarter, more proactive decisions. In this article, we break down the latest research to share expert insights and highlight real-world incidents to help you assess your organization's vulnerabilities and refine your insider threat management strategy. Key takeaways. The cost and frequency of insider-driven security incidents continues to rise. Negligence remains the leading cause of insider incidents. Security teams face mounting challenges in managing insider risks due to complex IT environments, rapid adoption of new technologies, and inconsistent security controls. Today's sophisticated technological solutions are a cornerstone of insider threat prevention. So here's some statistics here on insider threats. Top 3 insider threat actors and incidents: privileged users, regular employees, and third parties. So it goes on to list a bunch of examples where you have people have access to everything, like you said, Jeff, that shouldn't have access to everything are the number one source. Number 2 would be regular employees. And there's examples in this article, by the way, on specific instances, and then third party, subcontractors, those sort of things. Cost and frequency of insider threat incidents by risk profile. Most expensive, credential theft, then malicious intent, then insider negligence. So these two right here, credential theft and malicious intent, speaks to the terrorist threat in particular. Once you've got credentials, you can extract all kinds of information out of systems that physically get you past, physical barriers as well. And we'll skip down to the next one. Common insider attack vectors: miscellaneous errors and privilege misuse. So we're back to privilege. Somebody having more access than is reasonably required to do their job, and then gets recruited, as Khalid mentioned. Moving to, and look at the financial gain. There you go, Khalid. So I've been in God knows how many wrecks now, and I don't know how many times it's happened, probably 3 or 4 times now. I've gone to my attorney, Michael Politis, on this stuff. And he said, you know what, there's no sense in suing. Well, they've got insurance coverage. You get $25,000 or whatever, but they don't have anything, or they're in debt up to their eyeballs. There's no sense in suing them. That information is not hard to come by, is the point that I'm trying to make. Factors contributing to the complexity of detecting and preventing insider threats. So increasing IT environment complexity. So there's this habit amongst companies where they organically grow and they're like, boy, we need a piece of software equipment to accomplish this next task. So we'll buy this and we'll bolt it onto what we already have. And in the end, you get this organic growth of all these disparate systems that have been stitched together very poorly. And it's spaghetti. And it's virtually impossible for security teams to think of every possible angle that people can get in, because now you're asking systems engineers to be experts. I kid you not, I've seen up to 300 different disparate systems stitched together like this. It's an absolute mess. So as it gets complex, it's a lot harder to manage. Insider threats are becoming
Microsoft Windows.
Yeah.
Well, that's Microsoft, no word of a lie. And keep in mind, that I spoke out against Microsoft frequently on behalf of Sun. I was a product evangelist, and I was so privileged. I had a whole cadre of Microsofties who would follow me from, one speaking engagement at Linux World to real world Linux, so on and so forth, and haggle with me. But I had the advantage of being a systems and network engineer as well as an executive. So it was actually pretty entertaining. It was funny, but Microsoft stuff is garbage, but that's a whole other topic. Let me reframe that, because I don't work for Sun and I don't have legal protection. Back then, Microsoft stuff is allegedly garbage. We'll leave it at that. Insider threats are becoming more frequent. Check this out. From 2023 to 2024, 13% to 25%, the number of organizations experiencing 6 to 10 attacks per year. 2023, 4%, 2024, 21%, the number of organizations experiencing 11 to 20 attacks per year. I mean, and again, this is all insider attacks in this article, by the way. So costs of insider threats continue to rise. So direct costs, funds required to detect, mitigate, indirect costs. I'm not going to go into all those, but there's a number here somewhere that I want to find that I think this is it here. Yeah, here we go. Detecting and preventing insider attacks takes time. The longer an insider incident goes undetected, the more severe the consequences. Some breaches may go undetected for months or even years. Detecting the actions of malicious insiders is challenging, as they know exactly where sensitive data is stored, which cybersecurity measures are in place. Spotting negligent insiders is also tricky, as it involves tracking the actions of all users in your organization. This is the number I wanted to mention right here. It takes 81 days on average to detect and contain an insider threat incident. 81 days. So for argument's sake, Khalid, if ISIS, say, was targeting something 30 days from now, they know that they're covered. Nobody's going to probably get caught. Or if they do, it'll only be a fraction of the people, right?
By the time they get caught, they will have gotten the data. The guy will have quit his job, moved on, disappeared, and the data's out.
Yeah. So first one here, I'm going to go to Jeff with you on this and just get your thoughts. So given that 63% of insider threats involve credentials theft, how should hospitals restrict and monitor physical access credentials differently than digital access? So back in the day, like I'm going back 25 years ago, Jeff, we carried around a device that had a very specific hash on it. Okay. So when we went to access different physical locations, or if we were logged onto the network and we were working on our system, our Sunrays at the time, that key fob went everywhere with us and would generate a unique code based on the time, where I was, what I was trying to access. And there was no easy way around that. I mean, anything that's written by humans can be cracked, but it's target hardening, right? When it's that hard, there's a lot easier targets to go after. Did you guys do that stuff in your career, Jeff? And I mean, I'm guessing that you've seen it at least somewhere through your career.
There's different kinds. There's some, I was at a facility where, I had to have a badge to get in, and then they had a palm reader to get through the door. And if your palm reader thing didn't work, I've seen some where you had to use thumbprint to, you had a badge, but you had to have a thumbprint. Someone can copy the badge, they can't copy the thumbprint. Other places you'll have a badge and you'll have a fob, and the fob it's kind of a random number generated, but it's kept track of. And when you log in, you have to punch in the number that's on the fob, and you've got to do it within 30 seconds or something like that, because it's constantly changing, and you've got to have the one that's assigned to that fob at that time. And if you have somebody else's fob, it won't work. It's got to match your login credentials. So that one fob is only for you and you only. So there's ways you can do it. And people look, oh, it's a hassle. Well, yeah, it is a hassle, but you know what? That's called security. Get over it.
Let me throw this out from firsthand experience. So I'm very, very partial to Unix and Linux systems. Are far better operating systems than anything Microsoft's ever made. Every operating system out there, which, by the way, so Android is Linux. So if you're talking computing devices, phones are computing devices, 90% of computers now are powered by Linux. And 20 years ago, Microsoft, ignored it and said it would never be anything. But where I'm going with that, from a technical perspective, Unix and Linux have built-in RNGs, so random number generators, right? And it's used for all sorts of different aspects inside the operating systems, which are multi-user, multi-level, no root access, et cetera, et cetera. You can go and find dozens of RNG exploits in the Microsoft world that have happened over the years. It's just a great example of their RNG random number generator has found not to be very random. That you can actually discover the patterns to them, which is just disgusting. I'll tell you another thing while I'm on this soapbox, that the vast majority of computer systems that are exploited are Microsoft, but keep in mind 90+% of the internet is powered by Unix and Linux. It's not Windows desktop computers or Windows servers even.
I was talking to a cybersecurity.
You're on mute,
No, I shouldn't.
You're good.
Oh,
Okay,
Gotcha.
I was talking to a cybersecurity expert once this years ago, and we were talking about system vulnerabilities, blah blah blah, and I said, so how, what protection software do you have on your Windows machine at home? And he goes, oh God, no, I never use Windows. He says, I use Windows at work because he has to detect and figure out viruses and stuff. He says, oh, I never use a Windows machine for my own stuff. I only use Apple.
Well, and let's be clear, when OS 10 was released by Apple, just since we're on this topic, it's based on Berkeley School distribution of Unix. So the Cliff Notes version, this is where all this comes from. I can stitch this together pretty quickly from a technical perspective. You guys probably all remember when we were younger that there were some locations in the country that you couldn't call. You could not get a call to go through to rural communities in some instances, okay? So there was a project started in 1960 called Multics, M-U-L-T-I-C-S. Honeywell was the one who brought everybody to the table. And the goal was to make software that ran on everybody's telephony equipment so that you could make calls everywhere across the country, okay? And so everybody jumped on board with it, and as per usual in the tech industry, and everything devolved into arguments and my system's better than your system, blah, 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 blah. It fell apart. Honeywell said, well, we're taking our toys and we're going home. So they took Multics, and to this day, believe it or not, there are still some installations around the country using the old Multics Honeywell systems. However, Dennis Ritchie and Ken Thompson, who worked for AT&T Bell Labs, unbeknownst to their immediate managers, decided that they were going to write the C programming language and the Unix operating system. And originally Unix was spelled U-N-I-C-S. It meant unmultics. And then it ended up with an X, U-N-I-X sort of thing. So they completed this. Multi-user operating system ran on every piece of equipment out there. And by multi-user, you have, delineation of privileges automatically stuff. They went to their managers and they said, hey, check out what we did. We created a new programming language that's ultra tight and fast. And we built this network-oriented multi-user operating system. AT&T was so excited. They said, we're going to put this in the public domain. So they and it was 1971. So they put all of the code base out in the public domain. Institutions like Berkeley, other schools and their comp sci programs, they took that code and ran with it. And we ended up with a forking of the code base. All of these different distributions of Unix were different. Well, in 1977, AT&T was like, I think we made a mistake here. We can make a lot of money off of this. And they stopped putting anything past that in the public domain, but the genie was out of the bottle. So for example, this is where Sun Microsystems came from. It stands for Stanford University Network. And it was based on the original AT&T Unix code. So if anybody remembers anything from tech in the 80s, you would pay $40,000 for a workstation from somebody like Sun, IBM. Their version was AIX, HP was called HPUX, HPUX. And so you had all these proprietary different Unix operating systems. It was like the Unix wars, right? Linus Torvalds comes along in 1991 and says, we're not going to spend that kind of money. We can't afford that. He was a comp sci student in Helsinki, Finland, and created Linux, which is a Unix clone that ran on commodity hardware, x86 hardware. And that's where the whole thing started. So today, Linux is the predominant operating system in the entire world, and it's 100% open source. There are millions of people that look at every line of code in the Linux operating system, and it's the reason it's the most secure product out there by an order of magnitude. So I shall get off my product evangelist kick. I mean, I love speaking on this topic back in the day, but let's move on here to the next one. Let me get it pulled up here. Apologies. Don't ever get me started on this tech stuff. All right, malicious insider types and characteristics and indicators, same company as you can see. So while organizations are spending a good deal of money protecting their data against unauthorized access from the outside, malicious insiders may pose no less harm. According to Verizon 2024 Breach Investigators Report, 35% of all data breaches experienced by large organizations in 2023 were caused by internal actors. That's not the official number. That might be Verizon's, but it's more than double that. Organizations that become victims of malicious insider threats may face negative consequences from loss of confidential data, revenue, and clients, reputational harm, or even going out of business. Let's look closer at how your organization can detect malicious insiders before they cause harm. So they break it down into the different types of malicious insiders, and you've got intellectual property theft, sabotage, fraud, espionage. And the stuff that involves terrorists, I guess you could say, falls in the espionage and physical access realm. And how trusted users become malicious insiders. So number one, grievance and ideation. So it's not uncommon, believe it or not, for some pretty large, organizations and businesses, when a person leaves their employ, the IT team might not lock everything down from their credentials ever, or they might lock it down next week. They might lock it down 2 weeks from now. And if that person is a sophisticated user, they will make sure that they continue to have access even after IT changes only what they know. So it's the IT world for this type of access stuff is a real cat and mouse game. It's like playing whack-a-mole. So behavioral indicators of malicious insiders. Not all employees become malicious insiders, so there's no need to cast suspicion on everyone. When hiring, pay attention to the following signs of a potentially risky insider. Background checks, including official records of arrests, harassment, hacking, or security violations at former workplaces. History of non-compliance with corporate policies, falsification of hiring information, cases of unprofessional behavior, abusive behavior towards other employees, personality conflicts, misuse of travel time or expenses at former workplaces, conflicts with former co-workers, and it goes on and on and on and on. I'm not going to bore everybody by reading that. I'm going to ask you, Khalid, how can any company gather that type of information when they've been given an assumed identity by the third parties that you already mentioned, the other countries that are selling IDs and passports?
You can't, because look, the goal to be able to hack somebody's computer or to get inside a company's network, you're not going to use a Muslim. You're not going to use a terrorist to go in and do it. You're going to look for the white guy. You're going to look for someone who's part of that company.
Hey. Wait, you can't be on our panel and show like anti-white.
Well, I'm not anti-white.
You're being racist against us now, Clete. Come on. I'm just kidding. Don't do that.
Yeah,
I'm just.
They're recruiting the normal American, and it's guys that have been with companies for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Look at the connection. When you look back at that California hacker list, they've hacked bank data, so they know who's in financial trouble. Mm-hmm. They target that person. So they draw the line. They go, okay, these people are carrying more debt than they can pay with their salaries. So let's start filtering through these guys, see who's interested in playing our game. They go to them with a pitch. Oh, we'll give you a job, but we need such and such information from your company. We have the same type of organization. We need this kind of data from your organization. Or we need you to put this USB into your computer and install a spyware click for us so we can access your system from outside the network. So what you're actually looking at is you're not looking at the Muslim coming in. You're looking at a guy who's been in that company 6 months, 3 months, a year, has been part of the world, comes into a company, gets a job, gets settled in. He's perfectly fine for a month. And he's been taught this, that you act normal for 1 month. Then a month from now, you'll get an envelope that'll have a USB drive in it. You plug in that USB drive. All you need to do is run X software. That software runs, pull the USB drive, break it in half, throw it in the toilet, get rid of it. It's gone. And quit your job a week later and come work for us. There's no job that he goes to after that. I mean, that's just a candy, a lollipop that's been offered to him. The goal was to get him to penetrate the system. Once he's penetrated the system, it's game over. And you're in, you get all the data you want. One of the things we do here at Command 11, we don't have USB access on any of our computers. You cannot plug in a drive.
Khalid, just another question here. I found a couple examples, but I have no idea how widespread this might be. But it basically, another, call it target for these guys would be Muslims already in the organization and radicalizing them, like seeking out people that are easier to radicalize than, say, an infidel.
Again, you're talking about that same thing we were talking about last night. To take a normal person and radicalize them, you're talking about 6 weeks. It'll take 6 weeks to take a normal person and radicalize him. Once you've radicalized him, you can have him do anything you want. But the problem you've got is it's not the radical that's coming in and doing it. It's the company that's got to be proactive. There shouldn't be access to Gmail. There shouldn't be access to social media on corporate machines. Once you give that access, anything can get out.
Well, Randy, I got a question for you that it's political, but is what it is. So in the age of political correctness, how can these people be vetted better without somebody saying, well, you're targeting me because of my race or ethnicity? Do you know what I mean? Like I can see them crawling up your ass and my ass with a microscope because we're middle-aged white guys. But if you do that with many visible minorities, whether it's justified or not, they're going to go to the, EEOC and complain that they were targeted. I mean, I'm sure that people are kind of going, yeah, I don't really want to get involved. That just carry on, move this guy through the process.
Well, that's part of the problem, isn't it? When we start doing that. Used to, I tell people all the time, this is a little different, but when I grew up, nobody cared if you got picked on at school. You got bullied. You know what they told you? Deal with it yourself. It's not going to end until you do. And so, but now we've lost that culture, right? And I think that's what we're talking about here. That and then people don't want to hold themselves accountable for any reason at all today. It's not my fault. It's somebody else's. It's the companies. It's anybody but themselves. And I think it falls along with that. And as I'm sitting here listening to all this, what I'm thinking is, why aren't we doing something with AI on this kind of stuff, right? Because this is the kind of thing that AI should be used for in a good and a ethical way. Because who was that? Who was that CEO that died in that boat right off of Italy? A twister came by and sunk the boat. He had just sold his company that had AI that could now detect hackers as they were hacking. Which, we don't have that capability. Nobody knew you got hacked until the actual hack went through. Yep. So, he sold that company, and I'm just wondering what they're doing with that technology, because it seems like it would help clean a lot of this stuff up, because it's all going to come down to patterns. What we talked about,
There's quite a bit of that that's well down the road now, Randy, that's actually being deployed. I don't know why it's not broadcast publicly, maybe, security through obscurity or something like that, but that stuff is pretty far down the road. But Jeff, I've got a question for you. I want to come back to hospitals here. So just at a high level, how should you secure hospitals, like physically secure hospitals and sections of hospitals without impeding the rapid movement of, medical professionals, patients, and everything that are in a, bad way, especially in a trauma center?
You do it by zones. You have limited access by zone, because someone in the emergency room probably doesn't need immediate access to oncology. Okay. And so you limit, and so if someone has a pass to get into, you can't stop everything, but if they have a key card for the emergency room, doesn't mean they go up into the neonatal. And if there's a child in emergency that needs to go up to neonatal, then that's when you call up to neonatal and someone's there to open the door for you. but this idea that everybody can go everywhere anytime they want is the problem, because it helps the good guy, but it also helps the bad guy. Security is inconvenient. There is no security system. There's always a trade-off between security and convenience, and everybody errs on the side of convenience over security every single time.
In a generic sense, I've been saying for years, the first thing you do is decide what you want. The next thing you do is decide what you're willing to give up to get it. So you can't have enhanced security without giving up some element of convenience, right? So moving on to the next one here. This is a long paper. I'm not going to read it. I'm literally just going to hit on a couple things. So one of the conditions that results in this, challenges in hybrid work environments. So people like myself worked in high tech for years. I'm used to having remote VPN access. It's nothing new to me. But during Charlie 19, this, was a new thing for a lot of people. I can work at home. I can work in the office. And in order to accomplish, that's a great example, actually, you have to loosen up the perimeter of your network to allow people to work remotely. That doesn't come without a cost. So that's been one area, but there's another one down here that I want to touch on. I want to hear your thoughts on it as well, Khalid. Advanced persistent threats, APTs and nation state actors. Nation state actors and APTs further complicate the insider threat landscape. These sophisticated adversaries may recruit or coerce insiders to infiltrate organizations, gaining long-term access for espionage or sabotage. So I want to get your thoughts very, very specifically on Iran in that regard, because I think Iran is a lot more advanced than many people realize. I'm not saying that they could go toe to toe with us in a kinetic war, but there's some pretty smart people in Iran, especially on this side of things.
Well, Iran and Russia have probably two of the most advanced cyber hacking teams in the world. Iran is underestimated because everyone says, oh, Iran, what could they do? What are they capable of? The kind of hacks that Iran has done over the past couple of years has shocked the world. They get a lot of support from Russia. Russia is the forefront of cyber hacking. Yeah. They have been able to penetrate levels of the US government that no one thought would be possible. And they do it like they're peeling an onion. They peel one side away, they come back out. They wait, they let the onion grow back, they peel the second level, and they peel the second level, and they go in again. Their intent, the APT hackers' intent, is to do one thing: drop a piece of spyware in. And they drop in a piece of spyware. And I'll give you an example here in Pakistan that we know. Pakistan Air Force was sent different officers who had access to different levels of security inside the Air Force were sent a Microsoft Word file that had a piece of spyware embedded inside of it. They opened the Word file, that spyware was installed on a computer. That spyware was not detected for 4 years. And that was inside of headquarters, that was inside of our bases, it was inside of everywhere. No one knew it was there. Someone stumbled on it. When I talk about IT departments, Tom, Dick, and Harry don't know that they have to update their Windows. They go, oh, it's a pain in the butt. We're not going to bother with it. I'm not going to download the new update. There's a reason that update is there. I mean, we're all Mac users. Over on our side, we're all Mac users. I don't touch Windows. I gave up Windows back in 2002 and said thank you, goodbye. I don't ever want to see this again on any of my systems. When you look at the Windows model, you get updates all the time, whether it be from Microsoft Office or whether it be for Microsoft Windows. And most people skip those security updates. They don't do that update. You've made your computer a threat because that reason that update was released, you haven't covered that update. And what ends up happening is these APTs are looking for those computers that have not run those updates. They are scanning top level. Okay, what version of Windows? What version of Windows? What version of Windows? What version of Windows? And they pop that thing in there. And because we did the report for the Pakistani military on what happened here. 4 years inside of our Air Force, you had access to everything, and I mean everything: officer information, weapons information, payroll information, everything you had access to. And the way they built that APT, because people have gotten these hackers have got so advanced, It was deleting itself. After it got the data, it deleted itself. It made it look like it never existed. Iran has that technology that they can go in, they can grab the data and delete the spyware so that you never even knew they were there.
Yep. It's incredibly sophisticated. Absolutely, Khalid. Appreciate pointing that out. So this next one here, I wish we had time to watch this entire video. It's really good, and it speaks specifically to terrorism and counterterrorism. And it also features a friend of ours, Jason Jones, who was a 23-year DPS captain in Texas. He's been on our podcast a couple times. He's really close friends with Tom Holman, Doc Pete, and those guys. And he's a subject matter expert on the border at Newsmax these days. I'm going to play a few minutes of it. I'm not going to play the whole thing, obviously, because it's, 30 minutes long. But I'm going to play probably 3 or 4 minutes because there's some really good information in this video. And while I'm playing this, I'm going to drop a link to it in the live chats for everybody.
The insider threat is one of the most complex challenges facing organizations and law enforcement alike. It is defined as one or more individuals with the access or inside knowledge of an organization that would allow them to exploit the vulnerabilities of that entity's security or facilities with the intent to cause harm. This video examines 3 manifestations of the insider threat. Terrorism, where an insider attacks civilians for a political ideology. Workplace violence, and a coworker who commits a violent act in the office. And finally, the multifaceted insider threats of cybersecurity, both those looking to penetrate network security and those who open vulnerabilities by not following protocol. We begin by looking at counterterrorism and how a political ideology can drive an insider toward radicalization in plain sight. For instance, San Bernardino, where in 2015, 2 gunmen pledging allegiance to ISIS attacked coworkers at an office Christmas party. 40 were wounded or killed in the attack, which was foreshadowed by several workplace arguments regarding religion and politics. The couple exhibited many signs of radicalization, obtaining media by Al-Qaeda and ISIS, confronting coworkers about their faith, and purchasing more than $30,000 in weapons. The attack resulted in a deadly shootout with police on the highway, and a sweep of the area revealed that the couple had intended to use improvised explosives in the attack. What can we do to prevent attacks like this in the future when an insider has voiced radical ideations and begins to intimidate colleagues? We talked to experts about the signs of radicalization and the use of reporting suspicious behavior to law enforcement. One of those experts is Ed Davis, who was commissioner of the Boston Police Department when they faced a terror attack of their own just 2 years earlier.
One of the things that we recognized after sort of doing a post-mortem on the Tsarnaev investigation was that Tamerlan had acted out in the mosque in Cambridge. On 2 different occasions, he had objected and had arguments with the imam about what the imam was suggesting. He wanted the imam to be more radical, to be more in alignment with Sharia law and less Western in the way that he was teaching Islam. And so that's a warning. When you see somebody in the congregation standing up and demanding things that might indicate extremism, if that imam had felt comfortable enough with us to call us and say, I don't know what to do with this guy, they eventually ejected him from the mosque. If at some point we had heard about that, it may have reactivated the FBI investigation. And whether it was his family or the community around him, if someone had reached out to us, it might have changed the whole trajectory of this incident. I think people should realize that police get calls like this all the time, reporting a fear or something that's concerning them. We would much rather check that out and have it lead to nothing than not get the call and have an incident occur.
When it comes to insider threat, when it comes to counterterrorism, we can and should suffer false positives. Shutting down non-viable paths or proving the null is just as valuable or sometimes more valuable than, being on the scent of the truth, and in fact can help you get there faster.
If I could say anything that you can glean and you can learn by providing information that turns out to be false, if you will, is that you're building the relationship, right? You're learning a protocol that you may not have been familiar with prior, so that when you do have another insider threat, then you know who to call and you know how to make sure that information is getting to the right people quickly. That's not something people do every day. They're seeing something that makes them say, I need to pass some information on. History shows us that in these active shooter situations, the insider threat is real, and it can have global ties and global links, as we found in 2009 at Fort Hood, Major Nadal Hassan, who was well known, and then afterward, as we found, had been communicating overseas with an Imam, Anwar al-Awlaki. Prior to that, the Department of Defense also had a lot of pre-incident indicators from people he had been talking to and presenting to other soldiers who said this individual is radicalizing.
As we found in the 2009 Fort Hood shooting, even a United States Army base is not immune from the insider threat. Though deemed an act of workplace violence, the gunman in this case exhibited many signs of radicalization that highlights the relationship between counterterrorism and the insider threat.
Yeah, I see from my experience, some similarities between, a counterterrorism threat and a threat, within a company from an insider.
So I'm going to go ahead and stop it there. It's a good watch. Jason Jones is very intelligent. I want to get your comments first, Jeff, on the aspect, especially of the military intrusion, like in radicalizing people inside of our military. And then Randy, I want to hear your thoughts on that too.
Well, where someone is doesn't keep them from being radicalized. I mean, anybody can be radical. I'm not saying anybody can be radicalized, but anybody in any walk of life can be radicalized. If you've got that bent, if you've got that vulnerability, sure, all because you're, and if you're an Islamic person who's leaning towards the terrorist thing, the fundamentalist thing, the military is just a job. So yeah, absolutely anybody could be radicalized. We've seen it.
Randy, your thoughts on radicalizing people in the military?
Well, it's been done for a long time, right? I mean, in many other instances, probably in all of our engagements, but we can even go back to the beginning of Iraq. I still remember I was a private, right? We were, when 3rd ID first got there, I was in 2-7 Infantry. We got put in called Camp Pennsylvania. And it's at the very end of the lines out in Kuwait that, we had ever since Desert Storm. We had maintained a presence out there ever since. So there's ranges, there's miles of our stuff out there. And, when we first got in there, we were in Camp Pennsylvania was the last one. So we were only 10 miles from the Iraqi Kuwait border. When 101st came in, there was nowhere for them to go because when we got to camp, that meant all the other camps were already full. So they kicked us out of Camp Pennsylvania and we had to do an alpha. And before we ever even left, you remember, y'all remember this made the news. There was a guy that was a Muslim. He was an American, but he was Muslim, and he was 101st, and he went and tossed some grenades into their planning tent and killed a couple of guys. So it hasn't been the first time, and I would say that some people in the military can become disenfranchised. And I know we keep using that term, but that is one of the key indicators if you're going to be able to easily radicalize somebody. But it's no different than we already do. Like I've told you many times, when we go into another country and start watching everybody, not only do we want to find out who everybody is, but we want to look for the unhappy people, right? Who are the people that already have a beef with the system? Because they are very easy to manipulate and then get to do. Again, we're going to give them a job in something that's greater than themselves with this big, glorious outcome in the end. And, we do it every day of life around the globe. Why? Because we have found people are more than happy to pick up a weapon and go do whatever it is for this greater cause. It's a very simple process, and you touched on something earlier. We took about now, not maybe in the recent ones that are all transgender, But historically, over the last 20 years, the school shooter, well, even 10, all the school shooters that went in, what were they? They were disenfranchised teenagers that had been picked on, bullied. And what did they say? The FBI knew about every one of them, but still nothing was done.
Yeah.
They were on our radar.
Every time.
That's right. They were on our radar. Well, good job there.
Yep. It's like
So
the other guy
I'm going to accelerate.
the other day, the guy that vandalized MIT and left 2 bombs behind. He was on the JTTF radar, and they let him carry out the attack. I mean, we all went, what?
Yeah, that's another deep rabbit hole. I'm going to accelerate things a bit here and drive this thing home. I just put a link to this article in the live chat. There are a gazillion, speaking of transgenders, there's a gazillion examples of this, of hospitals being audited and failing miserably. And in this particular case, it all revolves around key cards. And this is a mental institution. So there's some very dangerous people in here. They make a note of that. And they've had no SOPs in place. When they lose, key cards get lost. Oh, well, here, just print another one. They don't deactivate the previous one. It's pretty crazy stuff. Next one's pretty crazy as well. So this is a post somebody made on Reddit saying, hosting residential IP network nodes. I've been getting paid $250 a month by a residential IP network provider named DSL Root to host devices in my home. They're on a separate network than what we use for personal use. They have dedicated DSL connections, one per host, to the ISP that provides the DSL coverage. My family used Starlink. Is this stupid for me to do? They just sit there and I get paid for it. The company pays the internet bill too. This is North Korea and other countries like that. Side hustle. Let foreign adversaries of the United States government install equipment in your home so they can use your home as a residential proxy. You'll make $250 a month and your internet gets paid for. Easy money. I mean, there's so many instances of these people breaking in one way or another. Next one's interesting. Man who planned to bomb Leeds Hospital, jailed for at least 37 years. Mohammed Farouk, 29, told a patient who talked him out of the attack he wanted to kill as many nurses as possible. A clinical support worker who took a viable pressure cooker bomb into a hospital intending to kill as many nurses as possible has been jailed for at least 37 years. Mohammed Farouk, 29, of Leeds, also plotted a terrorist attack on RAF Menwith Hill, a top secret spy base in North Yorkshire. Khalid, how many times have we heard somebody like Sadiq Khan say that all of these imports, whatever you want to call them, they're not the problem?
No.
Radical white guys are the problem, but it's not the imports.
The thing I don't understand is, look, I spent 25 years in the U.S. And if you ever met me in the U.S., you would think I was an American, because I assimilated, I lived in the system, I understood where I was. When you have people come and hyphenate, I am a Pakistani Britisher, that's your first trigger, because that's someone who refuses to assimilate. I'm an Indian American. That's someone who refuses to assimilate. They're bringing your values and trying to impose them on you. But again, we come back to that political correctness line, that we don't want to offend you. We don't want to hurt your feelings. But dude, you're either an American or you're not. You're in our country. You're either an American or you're not. That hyphenation does not exist.
Yeah, so we've got 3 more left. I'm just going to flip through them pretty quick. Interesting topics, but I'll give you all a chance to comment on them at the end. So first one, a hospital pharmacist spied on coworkers by installing key logging software. So this is software that runs in the background. The person doesn't know it's running, and it's capturing every single keystroke into it. And they grab that. They've got your credentials, everything you can possibly imagine. And this is happening inside the hospital. And then used for what purpose, right? Next one up here. When it comes to national security, this is brutal. The fact is, the sensitive computer systems code, cybersecurity, third parties plugged into systems that national defense depends on, is built on or maintained by either Indians with fake credentials who got the job through a contractor. Oh, and the contractor's name, Microsoft, over a qualified American through a fraud pipeline that is in every U.S. company. They literally break everything, have no idea what they're doing. Number 2, DEI hires who don't know what they're doing and have very minor credentials, but usually not even 1/10 as advanced as who they were hired over. Number 3, potential Chinese spies. Number 4, the older guy who knows what he was doing and hired before DEI and the mass replacement with Indians, foreigners took effect. This is the minority of employees now. This is many of us, and the only person usually who knows anything in entire groups and tries to whistleblow about the upcoming shitstorm. There's your DEI at work right there. All right. High grok, true or false? A Muslim Brotherhood memo discovered in 2004 FBI raid discusses a long-term plan to settle North America through civilization jihad to eliminate and destroy Western civilization from within. Grok's response, true. The 1991 memo by Muslim Brotherhood leader Muhammad Akram, uncovered in a 2004 FBI raid during the Holy Land Foundation investigation, explicitly describes settlement in North America as a civilization jihadist process aimed at eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within. This document was admitted as evidence into federal court. Jeff, this is obvious to all of us, but I mean, I don't know how you can't see it happening.
That was 20 years ago, and the memo was written 35 years ago. This is why the Muslim Brotherhood needs to be declared a terrorist organization. And that document was used in a court case where they got convicted of providing material support to terrorists.
Shocking.
Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization and needs to be treated accordingly.
Yeah. Randy, do you want to add anything to that? Just giving you a chance for final comments on this.
Yeah, you know how it is. I mean, I think it's rumored that, Obama is now connected to them in some way. And, I guess we'll see when it all pans out.
Yep. Khalid, Muslim Brotherhood.
Muslim Brotherhood, I've hammered on this needs to be a terrorist organization flat out. They are a cover organization for everything that exists in the Middle East terrorist world. There's one thing I want to touch on. My wife brought this up the other day. When you're outside your hospitals, people are dropping cards that have QR codes on them. Cards that have QR codes on them dropped outside of hospitals, specifically hospitals. Please do not scan that QR code. Please don't scan it. Someone sent it to us, and she showed it to me and said, what is this about? And I said, give it to me. And I picked up one of my dummy phones that doesn't have any data on it, any information on it. And when I scanned it, it installed spyware on my phone. Nice. Now, if you're a hospital employee and you see a QR code and you decide to scan it, you've just given access to your phone, your credentials, everything that may exist, any kind of information that may exist on your phone to a hospital. You've given that access out. So please, be a little more situationally aware around your hospitals. Don't pick things up. Don't scan them. Don't stick them in your pocket. I know about key fobs that have disappeared from hospitals. And no one's even bothered doing anything about it. Key cards are gone. Keys are gone. I mean, my wife works in the healthcare industry. She retired from when we moved to Pakistan, she left healthcare in the US. And she still got a lot of contacts back there. And people, when we started talking about the hospital threat, were just sending her all kinds of information. And the things that I have learned, I never wanted to know. I literally never wanted to know.
Quick question on that topic, Clee, before we wrap this up. How many hospitals have been briefed by Sarah and your group on the threat? And how many have actually done anything about it? I don't want any names broadcast on here.
No, I'm not going to give you names, but I'll tell you this way. I have spoken to 15 hospitals. Sarah, I think, has spoken to about 25 or 30. 5 have implemented any kind of hardening of their security.
And did you see this, Chris? I don't know if you're tracking, but this Christopher Dave Adele looks like off of YouTube. Said, did we cover the Tier 1 Trauma Center power outage in Salt Lake City yesterday? Not only power, but also generators failed. So I don't know if you saw that or not.
I briefly caught it. I didn't have a chance to put it in, but I appreciate him mentioning that.
Yeah.
Did you catch the ICE office in Manhattan getting hit with 5 envelopes of white powder today, right before we went on the air? This came out. And yesterday in Northern California, all the cell networks went down.
Yeah, but I thought potentially anthrax, attacks by mail, that doesn't happen. That's just a figment of our imagination.
But
Right?
when you're testing, I mean, you're gonna try everything. SOPs. How do you know it was sent by the mail? Maybe somebody walked in and dropped the envelopes into the mail room. You don't know what the origin of this stuff is, and you don't know what they're trying to find out. But this was broadcast on mainstream media. I went, wow, they actually broadcast this one.
So, question for Jeff, just before we wrap this thing up. I thought that the Postal Service had implemented something where they have some sort of, dust or chemical or spray or something that supposedly identifies anthrax and other types of things.
Well, to really identify, you have to culture it. What they were doing after the anthrax attacks after 9/11 is they were using basically ion beams to sterilize the mail. The idea was that they would use, it's sort of like using, gamma radiation to make, to sterilize food and bandages. So they were using electron beams to basically zap the mail because it didn't damage the paper, but anything alive in it got killed.
Appreciate that. So that's all of the stuff we're going to share tonight. Couple quick closing points. Number one, to me at least, it strikes me as very ironic that the places that are meant to heal people and fix them are now a primary target for terrorist infiltration. It just strikes me as very ironic. But there's a ton of evidence out there. If you look up FBI response to hospital threat March of this year, they looked into a group, AX Insider, who put some of this information out there, and they turned around and they said, there's no threat. These are not the droids you're looking for. There's no threat. And that was total BS. The other part of this tonight that I want to specifically just touch on one last time, the statistics don't lie. There's been a 47% increase year over year in insider threats in healthcare facilities being physically targeted. So we're not just talking about people stealing patient records. We're talking about physically getting access. So as far as what we can do about it, really it boils down to, if you work in healthcare, you work in hospitals, be diligent. And if you see something, speak up. As simple as a lost, key card, report the badges. If you see somebody you don't recognize them and it feels off, it's probably off. You trust your sixth sense. We're back to Tony Blauer. Everybody who survived a near-death experience, who went on to live, has said it didn't feel right. Something didn't feel right. So you got to trust that sixth sense. If you're a visitor, make sure you've got situational awareness. I don't know how many times we've covered this, but when you go into a facility, a building, a restaurant, hospital, whatever it is, make sure you know where your exits are. And I'm in a restaurant most of the time, just because, part of my family's from Greece. It's all about food and restaurants. The quickest way to get out of a restaurant is usually run through the kitchen, because there's usually a backdoor access there as well. But, keep your eyes open for this stuff. Trust your instincts. And, if you have any influence over anybody who works in hospitals, just promote that there are better protocols, especially when it comes to physical access. So I want to thank Tim Smith again. So Tim's been an awesome addition here recently in our private signal chat. Yeah. You go to survivaldispatch.news. Yeah, go ahead, Khalid. You want to say something about Tim? He's a machine.
Fantastic. I mean, he picks up stories that we would never even see.
He's been awesome. I mean, he's not challenging Dale yet. Like, Dale is the most prolific poster I've ever seen. But if you go to survivaldispatch.news, if you sign up for a free account, you get our sit reps, you get the watch guide, you get JJ Morris's, learning videos, you get early access to them. But if you pay $7.99 a month or $74.99 a year, which gets you 2.5 free months, you get a bunch of other stuff. One of them is you get an invite to our extremely busy signal chat. And if you also get, I'm trying to think everything off the top of my head, you get it enrolled Survival Dispatch emergency notification system, 37 Survival Dispatch Insider magazines sell for $10 each. And you get the sources for all of our sit reps. Or you'd think I'd have this memorized by now. But anyway, listen to this one from Tim. So terrorists are inside America. They're emboldened worldwide. We warned you this was coming based on Joe Biden's disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal. 1 minute, 18 seconds, conflicted question, and then it's peace out.
There are thousands that we have identified. We work very closely with the Department of Homeland Security, work very
Thousands
close
of terrorists.
known or suspected terrorists or those connected to them.
There are over 1,000 Taliban and ISKP operatives in the United States. These are deep cover operatives that report to Sirajuddin Haqqani and then the leadership of the Taliban and ISKP.
And where's this intel coming from?
The anti-Taliban resistance.
We also had the Biden administration's horrible debacle where they brought tens of thousands of unvetted Afghans into the United States of America. Now, NCTC has done their job, and they've identified over 1,400 of these Afghans as having ties to ISIS and to other terrorist groups, yet Biden let them into the interior of the United States.
Were any of those people vetted?
You work in the CIA. You tell me, is it possible to vet people, that many people, in 2 weeks while you're surrounded by Taliban, Haqqani, ISIS? There's a suicide bombing.
No.
Okay.
And working with DHS, working with CBP, working with ICE, working with the FBI to identify them, to find them, to see where they are, and to get them out of this country.
And that's it. Does anybody want to comment on that before we hit the conflicted question? I'll take that as a no. All right. Conflicted question 8. After the collapse, people started bartering for goods and services. Illegal drugs have become a hot commodity in your region. One day, while showing off your wares at a local trading post, someone tries to barter with you paying in drugs. There are no laws anymore to say what substances are legal or illegal, but you know these are harmful, addicting substances. Would you take illegal drugs in exchange for your goods and services while bartering after the collapse? Why or why not? We want to see your answers in the live chat. Go to you first, Jeff. Are you going to take somebody's drugs?
It's going to be one of those, it depends. If it is a drug that has a legitimate medical use, you know, if you have, you know, like a painkiller or something like that, someone breaks an arm or a leg, yeah, you have something you can give them. But if it's just a drug that's going to get you whacked out, no. A couple of reasons. One, morally opposed to it. But the other one is you run the risk of somebody, a kid, somebody getting a hold of it by accident and screwing themselves up. It's like, to me, it'd be like, you know, having a hand grenade running, you know, and letting it, you know, lay around. I wouldn't do that either.
Fair enough.
For the most part, no.
Randy.
Well, here's how I kind of see that, right? When you're in a survival situation, right? If someone is and they're starving, you're going to eat pretty much anything you can find, correct? And a lot of people say, "Oh no, I wouldn't do that." Well, what I can tell you is you just haven't got hungry enough. That's a fact. And if there's such a collapse, you're going to want to use anything you can. Now, I'm assuming, you know, if it was a drugs like what we're talking about, street drugs that, you know, right now none of us would do or take as a possession, you would be able to still use that somewhere down the road, kind of like an ATM card or something, assuming you can lock it up, right? Because you definitely, the problem with this is what happens if it gets loose in your group and now everybody, that's going to be a bad thing. So there had to be a process of being able to lock it up. But I say that to say, because one of the things I learned in the Army, certainly in my first deployment, right? Once we left Kuwait, we left all the PXs behind. So literally about a month later, certainly, 3 weeks into it, before we stopped, you know, it might have only been a couple of weeks now, I'm thinking about it. People were out of everything. And you know, I wasn't a smoker or a dipper, either one. But man, if I had known, I would have brought a tack box full of cigarettes and dip. Why? Because I won't go into detail what I saw people give for one cigarette in those days. It's absolute, not just monetary, but I know there were people that would pay $20 for a cigarette, but you could have sold those for $20 a pack for those cigarettes, and they would have been gone in a matter of hours. So you can't ever discount anything when you're in a survival situation, or truly, if society has collapsed, that is going to be a commodity. You know, I have a bunch of alcohol. I don't really drink, but it's one of the things I will use if something like that happened, because again, it's going to be like the cigarettes. When everybody runs out, there's going to be some people that need that alcohol, and they're going to be willing to pay a pretty good penny for it. So, or barter more than they normally would.
Yeah. Khalid, what would you do?
I think when you use the term drugs, I mean, you're talking street level drugs. You're not talking medications. For me, I would not play that game, because once you get into that game and start bartering for drugs, that game never stops. You keep bartering then, because people realize that you'll take this drug, you'll take this drug. Then they start coming to you saying, listen, give me food, give me this, take this from me. And you end up with a stockpile. Where do you unload it? Either you, and it comes back to that idea that if you're going to sell it to somebody, if you're going to give it to somebody in barter, you're going to destroy somebody in the process. And you're already in an apocalyptic world. Who's going to stop people from killing other people when they find out you've got this kind of a store of drugs behind you?
Yeah, good point. Right from the get-go, when I saw this, I thought to myself, I'm not doing it, because of everything that it draws. It draws the wrong people that you don't want to deal with. I'm not trading away my time. Time's the only thing can't be bought or replaced in this life. I'm not trading away my time. I'm not trading away my goods for something that, as it mentions in the question, is highly addictive. And then you get all of the behaviors that go with that. So, I mean, somebody else wants to do it, that's up to them. But no, I wouldn't participate in that economic adventure at all. So just a quick reminder to support our sponsors. They help us defray a lot of expenses. We spend over $3,000 a month just in software subscriptions. These guys at Carnival, we don't get any affiliate payment from them. They help us defer our monthly payments. So carnival.com, this is 100% American. Randy's got, see the top half here, those of us on the top half, we're Team Carnival. So 100% American meat products, so beef, chicken, pork. It's no mRNA, no histamines, no hormones, no antibiotics, grass finished, which means they've never been given any grain, 25-year shelf life. You can reconstitute it in 5 to 10 minutes. It's unflavored, so you can flavor it however you want. Mike Glover just did a really interesting shootout with this stuff, and he came to the conclusion that the peak tasted the best of all the stuff he tried, which is flavored out of the box. But the sodium count was so high that, especially if you're in a survival situation and you take in a lot of sodium, you get dehydrated. And I mean, all the bad things that go with being dehydrated in a survival situation, like being constipated, not to be rude, but it's a consideration. So if you go to carnival.com, you can use the code EATMEAT, all one word, get 10% off. These are awesome guys, like really awesome guys.
Yeah, whether you eat it now or like Bruno, you save yours for a rainy day, you won't be disappointed.
Yeah, good luck saving it. Tastes
I know, right?
Every time they send me some, I end up, I've already told you, I get shit from my wife because she's like, where'd the Carnival go? Oh, I was hungry. It's convenient. It's super convenient.
It really
it's super
is.
high quality, right? So, and all the other meat products you'll find out there, they're like these tiny little pieces of meat that have been cooked. You reconstitute them. It's like chewing on leather. This stuff is totally raw. Like it's no different than raw meat after you reconstitute it. I'll take that steak and throw it in the air fryer with a little bit of Redmond smoke salt on it. I cook it for 3 minutes in the air fryer. It comes out like it's been in a smoker for 24 hours. It's amazing. So anyway, we'll leave it at that. Like I said, John will be back on Sunday night. Not sure what topic he's going to be covering. We'll be back on Monday night with the next episode in our series on the road to 9/11 2.0, and it's on weapons, armor, and suicide belts hidden in plain sight. It's a pretty interesting topic. I had a look, and I haven't seen anybody else cover this angle of facilitating terrorism. But anyway, we'll see you Monday. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for your time and input. Appreciate everybody out there in the audience. We appreciate you as well. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and enjoy the new closing video.
To ensure a smooth transition. a peaceful transition of power.
And that is to have a smooth transition of power.
Smooth transition.
This peaceful transition.
Smooth transition.
Democracy depends on a peaceful transition of power. We had a smooth transition.
Smooth transition. So virtuous above it all. Evil, treasonous, cabal, your plan for it to take the fall. So righteous as you preach, your smooth transition.
My number one priority in the coming 2 months is to try to facilitate a transition that ensures our president-elect is successful.
You lying players full of fool while breaking every fucking rule. You've all been caught, there's no escape. Justice is your fate. Guantanamo waits your smooth transition.
A smooth transition. In the smooth transition of power, General Flynn, I am rooting hard for you.
America, have I say, everyone involved will pay. There'll be no tears, no need to pray. Justice is your fate. Guantanamo waits your smooth transition.
Make sure that this is a successful transition. I want to do everything we can to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then the country succeeds.
President Obama said, but I do have one specific recommendation. Stay away from Michael Flynn. He's bad news.
The office of the President of the United States and will to the